Please help me welcome Cameron McFadden.
Thanks, Lance. Well, thank you. One preliminary matter before we get started. Please purchase your 50/50 tickets. We are over $1,100, so somebody's going to be walking away with a tidy sum in their hands. We are going to do the drawing after my presentation. That will be the penultimate event. So I'm going to talk, as Les mentioned, about our escrow rate issue and potential changes to Reg 56. And I'm just going to frame the discussion, and the purpose of this is to bring awareness to everyone here as to what the issue really is. The association and the Department of Insurance is looking for comments, especially as it relates to the escrow issue. Again, I'm going to speak to the escrow rates matter first, and I'll describe what I think the issue, try to frame it up so everyone understands what we're talking about. The ILTA has been asked to issue a position on it, so that's the purpose, again, to get your comments so we can issue that position. And then I'll talk about the Reg 56. So the question posed on the escrow rate matter is, what is the appropriate escrow rate to charge when the escrow is taking place in a different county than where the property is located? And as I understand it, this has come up when Mr. Scanlon was doing his tour through the state. He got some comments related to this matter, and in order, again, to frame it up, it really comes up in the way I look at it in two scenarios, and or two possible solutions, excuse me. One is, should the escrow rate follow the property? And I think that poses some potential problems. But the other one is, or should the escrow rate be charged where the closing takes place? And I think that's, at least in our shop, I think that's the more common practice, because wherever the disbursement's taking place, that is the appropriate fee to be charged, I think would be the logic there. But just to frame up that there are different scenarios where this arises, and my company's experienced both. So we have the one scenario where the closing takes place in a county where the higher escrow rate, with a higher escrow rate than the county where the property is located. As an example, that would be, we're closing in Ada County and the property is in Jefferson County. And I think some of the comment to that would be, is that fair to the consumer? I mean, does the consumer know this is going on? Could the consumer close in Jefferson County and therefore save them some money? Well, I'd like to consider what drives that. How do we get to these scenarios? And then contrast it with the other one where the closing takes place in a county with a lower escrow rate than the property where the property is located. We see that a lot in my office. We do closings in Ada County, and the property is located in Blaine County, which has a significantly higher escrow rate. And again, just so that the membership recognizes that's customer driven, to customer preference. When we've got the customers in Ada County with their property in Blaine County, they want to sign and do their closing in Ada County. It's also lender driven. We are new to the Blaine County market at Title I. And we now have a lender that won't send their deals to us because they would escrow shop, and they wanted the escrow closing to take place. They wanted to sign up with a title company that didn't have a title plant or an operation in Blaine County, because we would do the escrow work, farm out the title work, do the signing in, and then actually ask our partners in Blaine County to do a courtesy signing for us. So net, it was a better deal for them. But everything took place, the signing and everything took place up in Blaine County. Well, now that we're in Blaine County, and we went to that lender and said, look, everything's taking place in Blaine County. The escrow's really taking place there, the title's taking place there. We have to charge our filed rate, which is the Blaine County rate. And they said, well, we're going to find another opportunity for a different closer, because they felt it's a benefit to their customer to charge the lower rate. Is anyone else experiencing these things? No, maybe it's just us. But again, this coin has at least a couple of different sides. And I've lost my clicker. So this way either. Oh.
We have experience with this.
Mr.
The situation in Blaine County is the lender, does the lender always have the possibility of the rules to do that?
That's a good question, Mr. Klosky. Question Mike asked is, when they're closing, when that lender's asking to close in Blaine County, can they get a CPL to cover their transaction? And, well, in the previous transactions, we had yes, because we had commonality of underwriters, so we were able to accommodate that. But I don't know, and I would guess that no, it's not always available, depending on who they're working with. So again, the purpose of this is to bring the group up to speed on what the matter is and the call for comments that has been made. And as you heard Mr. Scanlon ask yesterday, please provide any comments you have to the DOI by the 15th of March. And the board has been asked to provide comments. I don't think a decision's been made on what that position would be. So if you want to influence or direct any comments to us at the board level, please get those to us by the 10th. So we'll have an opportunity to correlate the responses and get an appropriate position stated on behalf of the association. Okay, Reg 56, my favorite. I'm sure it is yours too. In my opinion, Reg 56 is outdated, and there's a lot of things that it doesn't cover in the modern times. So the board tasked me with forming a committee to discuss that and talk about possible reform to that. And the way I framed it to our committee, and I think we have a good cross-section in the committee from north to south, east to west. What I don't think we have in the committee right now is a great kind of large versus small kind of opinion. Most of the people, folks on the committee are larger agents. And so I'm calling for the group to bring us their feedback on this. And I frame the issue this way. These are the three things that come up the most for me at my seat. And so it's the sponsorship issue as number one. The rule right now is when we're donating to trade associations, we can donate $2,000 a year. And that's per license. Well, at least in the larger market, like Ada County, for example, that goes extremely quickly. As an example, I think the Women's Council Realtors, they ask for a sponsor of, say, $500. So you're a quarter of the way done if you're going to participate in that organization. So I put it out to the committee, and the response on that has been a little bit varied, but to give you an idea of where it is, I mean, there is a group that would like that sponsorship number to go to 0. We don't sponsor anymore as an industry. That'd be easy, but I don't think that would be well received. At the other end of the spectrum, what's been told to me is they'd like a limit of, say, as high as $10,000. Well, that might make sense in Ada Canyon County, for example, with the demands that we have, but I appreciate that in other markets that's probably inappropriate. So again, that's kind of the spectrum of responses I have, kind of in the middle, and I don't know how we would justify it from a regulatory standpoint. Kind of in the middle, it's been suggested that we do a tiered approach, like our ILTA fees. You know, if you're in a larger market, then you have one level. If you're in a mid-tier market, then there's another level. And if you're in a small market, you would have another level. So that's kind of where that sits. Education classes. Again, for my company, that's a huge deal. We're big on education. We're big in being part of the community and educating our clients and customers. The department has come out with an advisory, as you all know from last year, saying strict interpretation of the rule. Our education classes can only be for title and escrow. And we are allowed to spend as much as $10 per participant per class. The spectrum of responses to that is, on one end of the spectrum, I'd say is my company's position, which would be we'd like to offer education courses that are relative to our industry, relative to our customers, so long as we charge a fee commensurate with the product provided. similar to we have in our research in the regulation. Others say, no, we're fine. We want it solely title and escrow, but we want the cost per person raised to $20, say. So that's, again, the spectrum of responses that we have so far. And the goal for me is, in order for the association to go forward, we need a fairly unified front. And otherwise, we're not representing our constituency well. And then lastly, social media is a big one for me. The rule is silent on it, wasn't contemplated. One of my committee members posed the question of, well, what about, so what's the problem? If I'm on Facebook and I like, one of our customers, that can't be a violation. Well, I would suggest to you that it is under the rule. You can't distinguish that in my way of thinking than me putting an advertisement on my billboard that says, congratulations, Realtor of the Year. The department issued a fine for that. So if we're not allowed to do that, how then can we extrapolate out that we can be on Facebook as a company and we can friend people and like them and compliment them and support them under the rule? Again, it's silent, so all we have is speculation at this time because I don't think anybody's had a problem with it. I know at least I've had several conversations with my colleagues and counterparts about this, and one thing that's consistent is none of us like it, but we do have differing opinions on how that should be interpreted. But I'd like some clarity in that section. So that's how I started the discussion with the committee, and again, that's the spectrum of ideas that have come out so far. But these are the responses I got back. So the committee has posed these additional matters. Settlement services and insurance for employees. I think many of our companies would like to be able to provide those services to our employees at a discounted rate. And under the rule, not allowed, as we all know. Increasing the listing package information to include photos and aerials. Advertising with trade associations, again, similar to this. I can't remember what I meant to say there, so I apologize. Many of them would like to have the meals and events definition narrowed so that there's more limitation on what we can do in terms of meals and entertainment. More limitation on the locale of title offices. They want more definition as to where we can office, what the requirements would be in order to rent space from a title producer. And then lastly, the fair use of food. As we all should know, food is the one bright line rule. We're not supposed to be handing it out, yet I'm sure, especially around Christmas time, if you go around to our customers' offices, I see a lot of food. Again, I don't have a huge problem with it personally. I don't think our company does, but the letter of the rule is no food. And so there is a group that would like to see that addressed in the rule as to be a more fair and reasonable application of that. I mean, really, if you're getting your customers because you got them a donut, is that really, do we really care about that? So anyway, any questions on what I've described to you so far? Again, I'm just trying to give you the parameters of what we've discussed about what the boundaries are, and we're looking for input. So the timeline of our process, if we go forward with this, is as follows. I need to make a recommendation to the board by the April board meeting as to what my committee has determined, what we found, and what items we'd like to go forward with. The department, Mr. Scanlon's been very generous. They're working with us. They're kind of waiting for us. They don't really have a dog in the fight, obviously. They're the enforcer of the rule. If we come up with a rule that is fair, I think that we'll have the support of the department, subject to whatever their review is. But up to now, there's been no problem. The rulemaking process means that after we make the recommendation at the board, we've got to have a proposed rule in place by around the August timeframe. And Jim, you can correct me if you know off the top of your head if that's exactly right. That's what I recall from our previous discussion. And then it'll go into the rulemaking process and then be reviewed by the legislature. At the earliest would be the session in 2017. So that's the timeline I'm up against to get this accomplished. so that was the end of my comments. Does anybody have any comment or discussion for the group? Silence. Well, I do appreciate any comments you have. If you don't know how to reach me through Title I, please send your comments to me. If you feel better about that, give me a call. Again, I'll be reporting back to the committee or through the committee and to the board on what we find out. But it's an important issue. I spend an inordinate amount of time on Reg 56, and I don't think I should. And I'd really like a rule that's a little more even-handed and something that's more balanced in the industry. I like Reg 56. I think it's an important tool to have, but I think it needs to be brought up to sort of our modern business practices and have some practicality in the way the market really works. So that's the whole intent.
Kevin, do you feel that with that $2,000 donation to trade associations, do you feel the consent of your committee is to raise that? Or do you keep that as it stands? Looking at that, you have a great idea about going to Idaho and depending upon where the agent is, that's what they're able to donate to the trade associations. My fear is that if it goes to $5,000 or $10,000, obviously every realtor in town has only been asked for $5,000 or $10,000.
Right. So that's a great point. The question was, do we have any consensus in the committee right now as to the sponsorship level and what it should be? And Mike correctly articulated kind of the difference of potential opinions and the impact it could have, especially in the smaller markets. And I'd say, no, we don't have any consensus at this time. We have a pretty broad spectrum. We'll be trying to narrow that and to get to that consensus. Again, I like the tiered approach that I mentioned earlier. I think it makes sense. How we come up with that number and how we would justify it, I don't know at this point, but I do think it makes sense. I don't think that it's certainly not the intent of the committee to try and put any agent or operation at a disadvantage. I don't think that the folks in the smaller counties should have to live in fear that Title I is going to come in and we're going to bring our larger budget. I mean, we should all have the goal is to have a level playing field and we all play by the same rules. And that's certainly the goal of the committee, to maintain that kind of atmosphere. All right, well, thank you very much. Get your tickets out. I think we're going to do our drawing here in just a minute.